Welcome to New Wave Global, ladies and gentlemen. Joining me from California is Nadeem Hussain. He's an author of several books, including The Agents of Change. He's also documented The Economy of Modern Sin, the book published by Oxford University Press. He's a commentator, public policy analyst who also looks at international and political affairs. These days, he's looking deeply into the elections taking place in the US, and we thought let's talk to him about what happened yesterday. How did Mamdani win the mayoral race in New York? Let me first welcome Nadeem. Nadeem, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asad, for having me. Glad to be here.
Nadeem, what happened in New York yesterday? To many, it was a big surprise. Was it a surprise for you too?
I think it wasn't really a super surprise in the actual mayoral race. The surprise was when the nomination for the Democratic Party happened a couple of months ago. So I think yesterday's win was just the same momentum that they carried from the party nomination to the actual mayoral, elections that happened yesterday.
Speaking of momentum, Mamdani did gain a lot of momentum. In fact, on social media across the world, his news was flashing all over the world. Even in the developing part, people was kind of resonating with his campaign. How did he gain so much momentum?
Yeah, I think that's a great case study for anyone who wants to rise right from the bottom and wants to reach to the top.
Hmm.
Asad, you might know that Mamdani became the US citizen only in 2018, which is, roughly around 7 years ago. And he was not born in the US. He was 7 year old when they moved to the US. I think to answer your question, Mamdani was really effective in building a grassroots movement. I think the way he gathered a very large number of volunteers and actually reached out to people, on ground, and the way he used social media and the languages. New York City speaks over 100 languages, and the way he ran his ads in multiple languages, doing things that people from specific cultures who have migrated to the US and to New York City would do. I think something that really resonated with the people in general, and that actually gained a lot of traction. And as you said, not just in the US, but globally.
But I'm sure his opponents were also spending a lot of money. In fact, as much as I know, they had larger sources of fund to tap on. So do you think it was like just the money that was spent on the campaign or social media, or was the message also too catchy?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, the way Mamdani built his movement was not primarily because of the money. Because if you pick the big names like Alex, Michael Bloomberg, Bill Ackman, these are the top
Hmm.
notch billionaires in New York City, and all of them were betting on Andrew Cuomo, the main opponent to Mamdani. I think Mamdani's messaging actually was very effective. He ran his entire campaign on affordability, and people in New York City know this pretty well that the city has really become super expensive for lower middle class people and for the working class people. And I think he was very consistent in the way and the topics that he would pick for his campaign. Like he was promising free buses. He was promising universal child care. He was promising, low cost grocery stores, so on. And he was, also committing to freezing the rents for 2 million New Yorkers. So I think these were sort of promises that actually uh, gained a lot of traction in the masses across the five boroughs.
Was it surprising that all of this happened? These socialist ideas now being sold to the public in a city like New York? Was it, do you think it was an anomaly of sorts?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, sounds like an anomaly. New York City being the capitalist city, the largest capital city, or perhaps the central capital city in the entire world, electing a mayor who calls himself a Democrat socialist. I think more than the socialist ideas, what really was picked by the people was this agenda on affordability, irrespective of what philosophies support it and what philosophies don't. So I think people didn't actually get into what socialism is and what capitalism is, and that's not what he really advocating for. What he was advocating was actual policy promises, and the actual policy measures that he plans to take when he gets into the city hall. And I think that really flew well with the folks across the New York City.
I'm not sure if you heard his speech yesterday. It was quite a moving speech. What's your take
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I think his speech, I think one thing that people really admire about Mamdani, that he's not apologetic of any of his identities. He's not apologetic that he's a Muslim. He's not apologetic that he's an immigrant. He is not apologetic that he advocates for a working class people. And I think that's what he communicated so well in his, quote unquote, victory speech as well. And I think the way he delivered it and the way he squared back to his promises right after the victory was just phenomenal. And I think the reason that he quoted, Jawaharlal Nehru in his speech was also something that, sort of resonated with a lot of people on the ideals that he follow and the ideas that he plans to promote and he has been promoting.
How do you place this victory given other political sort of winds of change that have taken place in the US, especially politics at the state level or politics at the federal level? Because a lot of what he's saying is, if not entirely, is predominantly opposed to what kind of politics is happening at the state or the federal level. So, do you think it would be easy for him to sweep across these two opposing tendencies and implement the agenda that he's promising the people he would implement?
I think what he committed on affordability was not different than the elections took place in November last year, the presidential election. You see, Donald Trump's entire campaign, one of the callings, in fact, one of the major callings was the prices of groceries in the US, which is again affordability. So that was somewhat similar to what happened last November. And he also picked on it that it was promised last November, and people are still finding it hard to put food on the table. So I think that was not entirely different than the wave that was there for about more than a year. But what was actually different and what happened in the other two states, in Virginia and New Jersey. New Jersey, of course, the neighboring city, the neighboring state, and also Jersey City, the neighboring city to New York City. Democrats won there and Democrats won in Virginia as well. I think what was different in Mamdani's campaign and these two governor races was that Mamdani was really effective in reaching out to new voters. He was effective in reaching out to people who would otherwise do not feel that they belong to the politics of the city. I think that bringing those people into fold was perhaps one of the major things that he was able to pull off. And otherwise, I think what happened in the two states and in the city of New York also signals that Democrats in the U.S. are perhaps regaining their grounds. Although the current mayor in the New York City is Eric Adams, is also Democrat. And the other two states are generally considered Democrat states. So, broadly speaking, in the country, I don't think it's a major change in the preferences of people, like the party that they support, because these are predominantly, blue states and city. So that I think that stays the same.
So are you saying that the election results were not unexpected because all of these states or constituencies were democratic in the past too?
See, were unexpected to an extent because Virginia, the outgoing governor, is from the Republican Party.
Right.
And before that, the governor of Virginia was a Democrat, and Virginia has mostly remained a Democrat state. So Democrats getting it back from Republicans, I'm talking about Virginia, was definitely, as I said, regaining their homes and their grounds. So that was definitely a tough call. And also the elections in New Jersey. It was a very tight election. Again, Democrats didn't have an easy win. In New York City, the Republican, nominee Sliva was not a major figure or not a major contender in the elections. It was primarily Andrew Cuomo, who was the former governor of the state of New York. His father was also a governor of the state of New York, and I think that's what Mamdani also contested a lot. That this is not a dynastic politics in the state and in the city, and I think that also went in his favor. But even being on independent lines, Asad, this is very important, that Andrew Cuomo was still able to secure about 41% of the votes that were casted. More than 2 million people came out of their homes and casted their votes. It was the highest number of votes being casted since 1969, and the highest number ever casted pre-poll in the city of New York. So I think in terms of turnout, in terms of getting people to cast their vote, even Andrew Cuomo was close to 1 million votes. I mean, close to 800,000 votes, and he was running on independent lines. And Mamdani was, 50.6%, roughly 51%. So a 10% lead sounds like a major lead, but Mamdani at the same time was a Democrat nominee, and Andrew Cuomo was not a nominee of any, of either of the two political parties. He was running as an independent and was still able to secure more than 800,000 votes, which is huge. So the credit goes to Andrew Cuomo as well, that despite being an independent, he was this close in the race.
Do you think, given the composition of the New York City, do you think migration played a role or immigration politics played a role? Because as we know, and the kind of politics that's happening from the center in the US, Mamdani's views clearly on the other side. Do you think that kind of politics essentially, won Mamdani the majority yesterday?
Absolutely. I think Mamdani picked on the issue of immigration heads on. He called himself a proud immigrant. I think he was able to mobilize the immigrants in the city. And, New York City houses one of the largest immigrant populations in the country. And he was also able to move generations of immigrants, like a second generation immigrants as well. I think that was one thing. And the second thing that he was really effective to do was connecting with the young people. Having 104,000 volunteers on ground who would knock, the doors, make phone calls, try to convince people to vote for Mamdani was a great accomplishment in itself. Like, you build a movement in about a year of more than 100,000 volunteers in a city like New York is just huge and is just phenomenal.
Promising rent affordability, health, childcare, universal health coverage, and then cutting down the size of the bureaucracy if I'm not missing anything. Do you think these are doable ideas, or are these populist sloganeering in your opinion?
See, I think these are populist slogans: freezing the rent, universal childcare, free buses, and increasing the number of school teachers in public schools. building homes for homeless public school children, kids. I mean, these are all very popular ideas and slogans. And looking at the fiscal feasibility of these ideas, and if the city can really afford it, I think what he's promising is increasing a 2%, tax on people who are earning more than $1 million in New York City, and then also increasing the corporate tax. And that's where he is planning to generate the revenue from to pay for all these programs. And I think he has come to the, I mean, he's going to come to the city hall in New York City based on these promises. And it sounds like they have a fiscal plan to budget these programs, and the fiscal plan is this, that they are going to tax the rich or the wealthy, to put it simply.
Hmm. And do you think would that incentivize firms to move to other states in the US? I'm assuming finance and IT are two big industries in New York, which are also very mobile industries. So the investments in those sectors are the investment in those two sectors is inherently mobile. Do you think that it would be a challenge for Mamdani and his cabinet to ensure that they're able to hold on to the size of investment in a city like New York?
No, you're right. I think there is a debate around this, that businesses would move out of New York City, would go to other places, perhaps would go to South. But I think at the same time, it's not very easy to move large businesses, especially in the financial sector. And New York, Wall Street is where everything happens when it comes to the big bets in the financial sector. And New York is home to Wall Street. And I think ever since his win, they have already started engaging with big businesses, with the business councils, with their business groups. And at the same time, I don't think he's really sort of confronting with anyone, and that includes businesses and billionaires as well. What he's trying to do is sort of bring them into the folds of his plans of taxing them at a higher rate. I think we might see some businesses moving out, but I don't really see that happening at a large scale, because for a business to be in the New York City has its own charm and incentive. And I think just one mayor's election would not drastically change the optics of that.
Before we close the show, Nadeem, I would like to know a bit more about Mamdani's history. Why are these Ugandan Indians? I'm not sure if you've read into their case study a lot, how a lot of these Indian families moved into Uganda and then they were thrown out of Uganda in very dire circumstances, and then they moved to the West. Some moved to the UK, some to the US. I don't know if you know about this, but Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister, is also a Ugandan Indian, and so is Mamdani. And this group of people have become incredibly successful. What's unique about them, and what is that one or two things that you see are also unique about Mamdani?
Yeah, I think you very rightly pointed out there is definitely something very unique about these people, and I think for me that uniqueness comes from the resilience that they build when they move countries from India to Uganda and from Uganda to the Western world. And Mamdani gets his second name, like his middle name, from one of the resistance and leaders in Uganda, who later became, the president and the prime minister of Uganda as well, Mr. Kwame. So I think, you mentioned Rishi Sunak as well, but for these people, because when they moved to Uganda and stayed there for some time, they really saw people fighting for their rights, people struggling for their rights. There were political movements, there was uprising in Uganda. And I think them experiencing them personally has really built that grit in them. and they carried that forward wherever they move. And I think that for me is one of the prerequisites to build a movement like this, the one that Mamdani was able to build in New York City.
Also, a kind of empathy for immigrants and
Yeah,
the tribulations that immigrants face, especially coming to the West and with all the barriers in the West.
that's very right. Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you, Nadeem, for joining us today. It was lovely having you.
Thank you so much for having me, and was great chatting with you.